You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at keeleycompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the #1 national best-selling author of the book On Fire. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, and he's the host of the Live Inspired podcast. John interviews extraordinary individuals on their life story so that you can wake up from accidental living and more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Robert Irvine, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited.
Well, you're blushing already. So for those who have not heard your name or they missed my long, obnoxious, rambunctious introduction of you, if you had to introduce yourself to a new friend, Robert, what do you do for a living? How do you respond to that?
It's really simple. You're going to love this. I make eggs.
Well, then they're going to ask you the question, for whom?
Anybody. Kings, queens, presidents, homeless folks on the street, you name it, our military, our firefighters, our first responders, 911 operators, doctors, nieces, teachers, nurses. I mean, look, eggs are a favorite for everybody. And it's kind of funny when I say that, because most people say, oh, you're a celebrity chef. I'm like, nope, I'm a cook. Drop the celebrity crap. I hate that. I really do. I used to love it. I don't know why, but now I'm not a big lover of it.
The fact that you just rattled off that bit of a resume from homeless folks to veterans to presidents and kings and queens is made all the more amazing when people hear your backstory. Because the reality is there are folks out there in the world who cook for those types of individuals who were set up for it in some regards. You were set up in some regards to never do it, which is part of why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Let's step away from Pennsylvania. Let's leave the United States. Let's go back to where you were born. Let's talk about growing up for a minute. What was life like for you and your siblings as a young person?
So it's kind of interesting because I have two sisters, Jackie and Colleen. Colleen is in Scotland, about to get married in August. Jackie is in Australia. I've been married for 35 years to an English soldier who was transferred to the Australian Army as a senior enlisted. My brother Gary was in the Army. I joined the Navy, but my father was an Army veteran, little Irish guy, a hard-nosed meat and potato guy. When he left the Army, he was a painter and decorator.
Right.
Painted houses, new builds, whatever. My mother worked in a store called Fads. Fads doesn't mean anything in the United States, but it actually does, because A.G. Stanley owned Fads Company. So that was like really interesting. We were very poor. My mother and father divorced when I was about 6 years old. I lived with my grandmother. I lived under a bridge for a little bit because we had no home, quilts, blankets, homeless, living out of containers, garbage containers. That was tough, but also made you hard. My mother and father repatriated. After we left my grandmother's in the bridge, we repatriated to go to a council house. And in England, that means a state government house, a row home, basically. My mother and father never remarried, although they did get back together again. For 52 years, they stayed together, but never remarried. And every Sunday, my father would ask my mother, obviously having been to the pub first, would she remarry him? And she always said, no way. He passed away at 72. And then she said to me, I should have married him because I got death benefits. But it's kind of interesting growing up. My little sister, Jackie, and I are very close because she loved food. I was not a foodie. I was a football guy, football meaning soccer, woodwork guy, and history. They were the three things I loved at school. The rest, I don't want to be at school. It's boring to me. and I was a practical joker. Didn't enjoy school, but my senior tutor knew that. He's like, you're distracted, you're smart, but you're silly at the same time. And I would go to his house and sit and have these discussions about the world, and he lived in, if you watch it or look for a very famous painting, it's called Harnham. And it's based on the river in Salisbury, the cathedral. He lived literally on that bridge, by that bridge. It's the
Wow.
most beautiful setting. But I would sit and talk about politics at 11 and 12 years old with him. My mother was poor. My father was poor. We didn't have any money because my dad used to drink it away. He was
Mm.
borderline alcoholic. So David Bodfish was his name, my senior tutor, and he said, "Look, I've got this opportunity to go on a cruise, which is a week away, a learning cruise." I said, "Yeah, I love it." But so I started doing those things. He would send me to camps because he knew my mother and father couldn't afford it. I got a wealth of experience, had a whale of a time, and kind of, I don't know, at 11 years old, I was doing home economics. The reason I did home economics was because there was 30 girls and me. And I thought, oh yeah, get a girlfriend. I'm a football player, rugby player, woodwork. I'm a good catch. Not the way we think as old people today, but I might get a girlfriend. It didn't happen because I made a quiche Lorraine, and that was my girlfriend and still is. Here I am at 6 years old in a couple of weeks, and that's my girlfriend.
Man, you went through a lot, and we're only at age 11. So I'm gonna pull you through a little bit of it. One of the things you said is, I'm under the bridge. I'm living out of trash cans. I'm hanging out with my grandmother. My parents are split. My dad's drinking away the income he is making, and it made me hard.
Yeah.
That, like an egg, that means a lot. So when you said it made me hard, what did that mean to you? What was it actually making you as a kid?
I didn't care about other people. I didn't care about feelings. I didn't care about, I mean, my mother loved me. Of course she did. I had all that stuff, right? Love is very unique to each individual. But I didn't have the warmth of a bedroom and a bike right? So I became very cold to people
Okay.
because you always feel, or I always felt at that point, oh, they're trying to take advantage of you, right? Very early on in my life. And if you watch, and I just fast forward and then we can go back, but if you watch Restaurant Impossible in the early days, you'll see that cold Robert Irvine.
You and I were talking before I hit record, and I'm like, you know what I love most about your story? It's not what you're doing now. It's the bumpiness and the texture and some of the mistakes that have led you to do it as well as you're doing it right now. And so
Yep.
I'm glad you're sort of unpacking that with us.
Yeah.
At 15, I was learning how to ride a bike, basically. I mean, I'm a baby at 15. What were you doing at 15?
15 years old, my mother would worked in a store, a wallpaper store, as I've mentioned, and she would go to work at 8 o'clock every morning. I would put on a red shirt, a red and black striped tie, a black sweater that was from Oxfam, or what you call Goodwill here. And I hated putting on with black pants and black shoes because it felt like I was just scratching. It just felt so uncomfortable to me. I'd wave my mother on the bus to work. I'd walk as though I was going to school. Then I'd double back and drink my dad's beer. He used to drink a beer called McEwen's, which is a Scottish beer. But I had to figure out, and this is kind of the conniving piece of me, I had to figure out if I drank his beer because there was only so many beers there, how do I replace that beer before he notices? One day, my mother called the house. Somebody must have suspected, or the school. I don't even know how she found out to this day, but she called the house. I answered the phone like an idiot and said, the Irvine residence. And she said, what the, and I won't go into the rest of it. I'll deal with you when I come home. She came home. You're going to the recruitment office. And by the way, I forgot to mention when I was 11 years old, my father, who used to drink every night, which I told you, met a chief, a Navy chief, a retired Navy chief who used to run a Sea Cadet unit like ROTC in Salisbury, where I lived. And my dad took me there from 11 till about 15, yeah, just over 15 and 2 months years old. And I loved it. I used to go away to bases. I used to go away to warships, marine bases, do all this exciting stuff. I was the kid that could fold a bed like a pro and press a uniform. And we had wool uniforms then. The Navy didn't have this modern tech. It was real wool. So when my mother found out that I was A, drinking my dad's beer, and B, not going to school. She's like, okay, let's go. You go into the career office. So I went to the Navy because my brother and dad were in the Army at that time. And I said, I'm not joining the Army. That's cannon fodder. That's like people shoot at you. I don't want to do that. So I ended up going to the Navy recruitment office. And I was not stupid, but pretty stupid.
Yes.
I can say that because it's me. I took the math test and the English test called the NAMET, Naval Arithmetic and English Test. And 5 being the lowest, 1 being the highest, I got 5.5, being the dumbest of the class. So the recruiter said, well, congratulations, Sonny. You've just joined Her Majesty's Royal Navy and you're going to be a cook. And I went, yay, because I'd been doing home economics for 4 years. And I loved what food could do. My dad hated it. My first quiche Lorraine, my food I'd bring home every week. He is a meat and potato guy. So he was like, what is this crap? Not very supportive at all in that way. And my mother was like, oh, your dad's just a meat and potato guy. I'm like, whatever. So I joined the Navy really early.
Robert, when you say this, I mean, this is your life, and so it's the only one you know well. Does it amaze you that this barely teenager is marching off to the Navy to peel potatoes?
No, I was all excited because remember, I'd been on these cruise ships and I'd been on these things that my tutor had sent me on. I was used to being away from home. It was like a vacation. It wasn't well, even though I was working, it wasn't work for me. I was learning to sail. I was learning to take tile knots. I was learning to cook more. I was learning to press uniform. There was always an engagement of the brain somewhere, and my engagement of brain was with older people.
Right.
And it continued, and it still continues that way now. But 15 years old, when I joined my first training base, which was Her Majesty's Royal Naval Base, Chatham Dean. So Chatham Dean was where the Army engineers used to recruit and train. But Chatham itself was where the ropery, where the old 1800 ships used to dock and they make the ropes. So I was based there for my first 8 weeks of cooking training.
Mm.
Well, little t-shirt, skinny little arms, JACK, junior assistant cook, Irvine. And we, first 8 weeks, learning eggs, learning the basics, learning all those kind of things that you do in a trade. And I would say a trade because cooking is a trade, even though my father thought it was a piss poor trade, was his words, right? Because he did not like that I became a cook subservient to other people. And that's how he saw cooking, cleaning, that kind of thing. So my dad did not talk to me for 2 years because I became this cook, this subservient, this kid. I didn't join the Army. I joined the Navy. I became a servant to somebody. He did not like that.
Mm. One of the quotes that I've heard you share in the past around this time was you're referring to your service. It taught me not just how to cook, but how to lead, how to execute under pressure, and how to serve others with excellence.
My first, so imagine this, I'm taking you through. So I did 6 weeks of how to learn to march at HMS Raleigh in Cornwall. Then I went to my professional training at Chatham. Then I went to a warship, HMS Apollo. 240 men. We didn't have women in the English service at that time on ships. It was a frigate, 240 guys, a commander in charge, pretty much like there is today in US destroyers. And I had a chief who was in charge of me. So I did my 8 weeks. You get a syllabus. You have to then work over 6 months and get signed off and continue to learn. Well, it was great. I had a guy named Bud, and I was attached to the wardroom galley, which was 22 people I had to cook for every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We were headed to the Falklands. Yeah, it was not a funny, bye-bye. My brother was in Northern Ireland at the time with Belfast getting stones thrown at him by 6-year-olds and shot at and all those kind of things. And I'm heading to the Falklands. We got to Ascension Islands, which is an American island about 4,000 miles away from Argentina, from the Falkland Isles. And we had what we call make amend, a day where you just jump off, swim, just it's like a barbecue kind of thing. Well, I said, oh, this is great. So jumping in, triggerfish. I don't know if you know what triggerfish are, but they're almost like piranhas. They bite, they eat, right? So it didn't spend much time in the water, but we did for fun throw the bacon scraps in so the fish would be attracted to the other people. It was funny. It wasn't at the time, but it was at the time. Then I put we had 2 bottles of olive oil. And my boss said to me, oh, yeah, olive oil is great for getting bronzed. So I put olive oil all over me, laid on a gray deck with a towel, woke up 3 hours later, like a Belisha beacon of red. Couldn't move for 2 days, but I had to cook. I still had to cook, but I was like in so much pain. And I had calamine lotion. I looked like a ghost in a galley, in a kitchen, because I was in so much pain. The leadership part came to me like this. It was no bigger than a box of this galley, and I was cooking for 22 officers. On the way to the Portlands, 4,000 miles left to go from Ascension Islands, I said to my skipper, who was a commander, Commander Payne, I said, can we do something like where we do something for the crew? And he said, no, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to do an afternoon tea, like make cakes and sandwiches and, between 2 and 4, right? Because dinner's at 6. Can we do something for those people? We're steaming, we're practicing how to shoot guns and all these kind of things. I said, but it would really be good for the morale. He said, well, you can do it for the wardroom, meaning the 22 officers. And I said, well, okay, that's a start. So I shut up and I just did it. And they loved it every day. What you got, chef? Victoria sponge, scones, da, 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 da. And then the one day I took some up to the bridge and I said to him, I really want to do it for the ship's company because there's a division between them and us, meaning me and you. He said, well, you can do that. That's fine. That's okay. I said, but the wardroom has to come to the main galley. Now we've got church and state. All right. And he said, okay. Fast forward 30 years, we're still doing it to this day. I was with the chairman of Joint Chiefs in Rota, Spain, going on an American ship. And we went on a British ship, and the wardroom mess attendant was telling the chairman of Joint Chiefs of the United States military the story I've just told you.
How about that, man?
But it brought.
Can I ask you about that? Because it seems abnormal to recognize the beauty of drawing people together and of trying to make the least among us feel as if they matter. So I'm curious, where did you pick up on that? The value of
I think it was just
servant
food.
leadership.
I would look. I care. I cared even as a young kid. I cared about what I was doing, the knife cuts I was doing, the food that I would prep. So we used to take off. The reason I said between 2 and 4 because that was bedtime. So we had a 3-watch system. One did breakfast, one did lunch, one did dinner, and prepped for each of the meals each time. But at 2 to 4, I didn't want to go to sleep and listen. And by the way, I'm dating myself now because it was Neil Diamond on a cassette. I only have one for 6 months. I know them songs inside out, back to front, whatever. I didn't want to go to bed and lay in a rack for, 2 hours. I wanted to do something that was meaningful, and baking to me and cooking to me was a way of expressing thoughtfulness or thankfulness. And I worked out every morning with these guys on the flight deck. We did PT in the morning, right? I'm like, oh, we got to do something for these guys. Got to do something. They're hardworking. And I've always felt that food is a way, it's comfort, but it's also a way to break down barriers. It's, we're doing this now on a computer. Back then, we didn't have computers. We didn't have the iPhone. We had a piece of paper that folded 3 ways, and it went home. And it took, 4 months to get back, like the old days. There was no internet service. So food and mail were the 2 things. And if you go in history, World War I, World War II, Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, it was all about mail if they could find you mail. And food was a comfort source. And I felt that we could do a better job. Although I had older guys that would resist me doing these things because it meant more work for them. I'm like, look, I'm not asking you to work. I'll do all the work. You can take the credit. I don't care. It's not about credit. It's about how do I make the crew feel and I need food would unite them to get things done faster with a more light-hearted approach. If that makes
Mm.
sense.
Was it difficult to transition from service into civilian life?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I think you think living on a bridge and being homeless and having no food is hard. Transition to the military after spending so much time in the military, and I talk about it a lot, especially here in the US, because in England there is no transition period, or there was no transition period, I should say. It was like, here's your papers, here's your date, you get out, you're 3 years of reserve, you show up once a year, you check your kit, you do a weekend, and you go on. By the way, I've never claimed that pension, never. But it was hard because you come out of doing service and you have this team around you and the jokingness, and you got your 3 square meals, you got your bed, you got all these things that you have that you take for granted. Then all of a sudden that's gone. You're not in uniform anymore. You don't bark an order and somebody jumps anymore. There is no service above self.
Mm.
It's you, and you're in a big wide world. And the big wide world is like step all over you, stand all over you. They want that job more than you do. Whereas in the military, it's wait your turn, take your exams, and you get promoted. That's what I was used to. So when I came out, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I ended up in a hotel in Warsaw, West Midlands. Then I ended up at a football club in Birmingham. Then I ended up reading a newspaper article from the London Times. There was an advert that said, hey, if you can cook, come and join a cruise ship. And I'm like, oh, £600. That was a lot of money to me. £600 was more than my month's salary. So I got my mother to give me £600 after I came out of the military. And I went up to London, had an interview. The next week I was in Miami, Florida, meeting these Herculean, and I say that specifically, amazing chefs running, 2 or 3,000 people ships with breakfast, lunch, dinner, mid snacks, midnight buffets, that, the whole 9 yards.
Nice.
I went, my first 6 months was as a sous chef. Then I went home and I was making somewhere in about, I think $2,000 or $3,000 a week, which is a lot. I'm not like, yeah, I'm king of England, and I put that into a bank in Grand Cayman. And on my last trip in Grand Cayman before going home after my 6 months, I would grab it, put all the money in a suitcase, carry it on a plane. Not like today. You can never do that today. But I fell in love with it. Number one, the ocean. Number two, the people. And I did that for, oh my God, one company.
When you say the people, does that mean your staff or those you
The
serve?
staff, so the staff were from all over the world. Americans, sorry, and I've proven this, Americans don't like to work, right? 18 hours a day. And on a cruise ship, that's what you do. Disney proved my theory correct when they hired all Americans, and 6 weeks later, we had to come back in and change the crew to a European crew from all over the world, because 18 hours a day, living in cramped quarters, 6 months, 8 months a year, is not somebody's ideal fun. I love that. I got to do the things. I got to meet people. I got to go places. Again, the Navy feel of young kid in charge of a lot of people, older, with consequences. Food had to be put up, food costs had to be made, food satisfaction, food hygiene in US ports. All those things I got paid $100 for every week if we hit a certain level. So I never lived on my salary. I lived on those bonuses. And I loved it. I took my mother on cruises, and she loved it. But it took me a while to transition from that military, not the mindset, because I was the same on the ship. I was very, hey, B, C, D, and there's a time and you're in charge. And it worked really well for me because that's how I was taught. And that's how the cruise ship industry works.
Robert, I honestly could spend hours, man, just talking with you about the resume, about the past, about what you're doing and what you're working on next. But we're going to speed up just a little bit to make sure that eventually your father, who may not have joined you on a cruise ship, if he chooses, could pay attention to what you were working on, because you become a television star.
So he didn't talk to me for 2 years, and I'll kind of recap and then spring into that.
Yeah.
Because it was only when I started working for a two-star admiral, 22 miles away from my home, even my home today, by the way, my mother's been in 52 years. My admiral, an old guy in Portsmouth, I lived in Salisbury, which is 22 miles away, said to me, "Hey, I'm gonna have a party. We're gonna bring your parents." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's not good, Mom." So he sent a driver for my mother, his driver from my 22 miles, and they were gonna have this party and whatever. My dad showed up in that car. Now, number one, I'm thinking I'm gonna lose my job. Number two, my dad's been drinking. It's just not good. It was not looking good. My mother was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but your dad wanted to come." Now we haven't talked for 2 years.
Wow.
Gets out, he meets my boss, the two-star admiral, and my boss was like a dad to me because I was working for him breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But at 12 o'clock, he would say we're going sailing in the Solent for a couple of hours before. So I sailed every day. I cooked every day for him and his wife. I had the best life on the planet. Then my dad shows up. After that visit, he started to come around thinking that, yes, you were serving, but in a really good way.
That's good.
Then when I fast forwarded to, I wrote Dinner Impossible, which was the first TV show, which was pretty much what I did in the military. We're going to, wherever, you got no food, you got no equipment, you got 8 hours to feed people or whatever, get it done. That became a TV show. It was a 22-minute TV show with Food Network. It went so crazy in its first 6 episodes, and that's all we filmed. It went to a 44-minute show, and we did over 300 and something episodes of it, right? Which was crazy. And I really did not know anything going in. And one of the premises of my TV shows are, I don't want to know. I want the story to be told to me or the mission given to me, and I'll figure it out. So Dinner Impossible was the first. My dad came and my mother came for 8 weeks of the year. They stayed in a hotel. I'm making $4,000 an episode at that point, which I thought I was rich, by the way. So the doorman would take care of my mom and my dad, and they would drive in cars and go to nice restaurants, and very different to what we were used to.
Yes.
My dad loved it. My mother was very subdued, still is very subdued about it. But he passed away almost 12 years ago. And we got to talk about this beginning of my life and his feeling subservient service and all this. And he was great with it when he died. He died of Alzheimer's and heart conditions and kidney conditions, all that kind of stuff. But he was a mean guy when he died, and he didn't know he was mean because he had Alzheimer's. It's kind of an interesting time. TV for me was that mean, not that cold side, I would say, not mean, cold. That you saw of Dinner Impossible, just as a mission, get it done. That's the military side. But hey, I'm not listening. This is what I've decided. This is what you're going to do. Just follow the orders and carry it through. And look, it became an instant success. Dinner Impossible and Restaurant Impossible. Nobody would argue with you. When you're the lead in a TV show, you pretty much have say of what you do, right? Except this time, Dinner Impossible, you would give me the mission, I would carry it out, and I've got time. I either make it or I fail it, one of the two. Restaurant Impossible was completely different because you were playing with somebody's life. And the first couple of seasons, it was, look, you failed, you suck at what you do, your food's terrible, your management's terrible, and I just wanted to fix the restaurant. That was my goal, of fixing the restaurant to make it successful. Then about 6 episodes, 8, 10, 12, I don't even know the number, started to realize something. I would leave and I'd do all the decoration and food and and they go back to their original state. And I started to call back and say, why are you doing that? Well, we don't understand, or we don't. So I started to listen. So instead of saying, oh, we're going to do this, I would say, well, what was your original plan of opening a restaurant? What was your original vision? What was your original? And once I understood their mindset, and what you see is 44 minutes is actually me being on 48 hours. So I don't sleep those times. Maybe it's a couple of hours if I'm lucky, But if I leave you worse off, and that's what I was doing, and I didn't realize it. In the first episodes, I was failing them, even though a nice restaurant, but I wasn't teaching them. So they would go back to their old ways that which they knew, and then they would fail. So I created that failure for them. I didn't help them. So then I started to listen, get the original plan, and then I could work around that plan based on what they told me. And it's so funny because I used to wear an IFB, a device that the producer could talk to me, and they would say, that's not what they told us yesterday. And some of the stories were uncovered, I can tell you, there was
moving.
There was a beating, there was abuse, and by the way, you would never see them on TV because that was cut. There was sexual things there was adultery, there was all these things that came up. My job is not to expose that stuff. That's not what I do. My job was to help you get help on what you need help with. Just fix the restaurant. Yes, I'll help you do this. And by the way, we've got out of 350 something restaurants. I mean, we are, I think after COVID, by the way, we're about 70% successful.
Yeah.
My biggest restaurant being $1.1 million in debt now does $3.4 million. I talk to them every week. They've become like lifelong friends. But that was that change of the cold-hearted Robert to the more caring, listening Robert.
Something that I think you'll appreciate is so to prepare for today, I read everything under the sun about your life. And there was an article years ago that in like the first 10 episodes you did, I think 9 of them are out of business.
Yeah.
So this guy was proving kind of like what a fraud you are. That was the goal.
Yeah.
And then they went to the last 25 restaurants you were part of, and 23 of them are in business.
Yeah.
So the goal was to prove you're a fraud. And what he discovered was, dang it, apparently something's working. And what you just spoke to was what was working was I stopped trying to change the restaurant and the menu. And I started paying attention to what was going on in the human lives and redeeming that.
Yeah.
There's a lesson there bigger than restaurants, Robert.
Yeah. It's weird when you put it that way, because look, everybody's out to when you're successful, no matter who you are, people are out to destroy you. That's just the human nature. They want to destroy you, or they want to make you look bad, or they want to. I didn't need any help. I could do that on my own. My mouth did that. I didn't need any help. I learned one thing. The world's a small place, and people communicate. It's a lesson for me early on, and you just proved what I just told you about. For me, it was about things, and then it became about people. And that's when my life changed. And I can tell you exactly when it changed. I can tell you the moment it changed. But my daughter, Annalise, is now 27. She was 16 years old. I'd been divorced from her mother. Her mother didn't like that Robert Irvine that I just told you about, although we were married for 16 years. It was interesting. One day I come home. I was doing a TV show. Abu Danza was the name of the restaurant. And we fixed the restaurant, really about to go into giving the restaurant back like I do the finale. And there was a wall, a service area that I'd ripped the door off because I hate doors on service, so you can't keep it clean. And we put a curtain there, but the wall had a space and I wanted a picture on it. And I said to Tom, hey, do me a favor, before you open the door, find me a picture with colors that were in the building before that we can put in there to make it look pretty. So he came in, put this picture. Oh, no, yeah, that's great. It looks great. We opened the doors. My daughter, Annalise, is in the audience, sitting down. We reveal the restaurant. And LJ jumps. He's a 300-pound autistic 11-year-old kid, right? One of 10 in the world with a very rare genetic disease. And he was going to die. Right? We knew that going in. Not good for my heart, but we knew that going in. So he comes in, he jumps out of his wheelchair because he sees this picture, not because he sees a beautiful restaurant, he sees a picture. And I'm like, literally bowled me over onto the floor. And I said, why is he doing this to his mom? He said, well, what you don't know, that picture is he painted that picture at a Make-A-Wish Foundation event years ago, and it's his favorite thing. LJ died 2 years later, by the way, and he's in all my shows still to this day, because this is why. So we're about to open. He does that. I get back up. I said, well, here's your new restaurant, to his mom. And she hands me an envelope. I opened the envelope and I said, what is it? And then he pull out, she said, it's our eviction notice from the house. This is the only house that LJ has ever grown up in. The other kids of the family. And I said, okay, I opened it up. So I said, hang on a minute. And I didn't say stop cameras, which I should have. I said, hang on a minute. So I called Mark Summers because he was my executive producer at that time, but he wasn't on set. One day he's not on set. And he answered, I said, listen, I just need you to say yes. Don't ask any questions. I said, I need $10,000. He said, why? I said, no questions, remember? I said, I'm going to match $10,000 out of my own money. You just say yes. He said, yes. I said, okay, I'll tell you about it later. I hung up. I said, look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to write a check for $20,000 to pay the back debt for your house. I'm going to put it straight to your mortgage company so you don't have to worry. We did that. We opened the restaurant. It was a huge success. They sold the restaurant and went to a smaller restaurant, which is fine. LJ died. They kept the house. LJ lived in the house till he passed away, the only house he knew. But my daughter was there. So if you ever look up online, Abadanza, you'll see I literally break down in tears, which is the first time ever, not the last time, but the first time ever, I think anybody's ever done that on TV in any shape or form, because it was real. Because they're my daughter. And I said, well, this is my daughter. And the biggest thing, all this is family. Let's take care of family. And you watch it, you will burst into tears. But that was what the defining moment of people changed for me.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that's
it
such a
was, it
beautiful
was,
story. It goes back to what you and I were chatting about a moment ago. It's not the restaurant or the menu. It's lives, and it's how we can make those lives better
yeah.
by being fully in on their life and bringing others along for the ride. Talk about your foundation.
So the interesting part about the foundation, I was going to Honduras with a group of special forces people, a base we own or we share called Sotocana Air Base. And it was 4th of July, and I was on my phone, social media, Twitter, and I get this tweet from Gary Sinise, who's I know has been on your show. So he said, is this the real Robert Irvine? I said, well, duh, I've got the blue check. It's me, and you don't. Is this the real Gary Sinise? And he said, yeah. He said, well, I've got an idea. We connected, and it was called the Invincible Spirit Festivals. So he and the Lieutenant Dan band would play at hospitals, and I would do all the food. And we've been doing that now for 16 years, 8 to 10,000 people during the height of the 18-year war. We still do it. I did one a couple of weeks in San Diego with him. One of my closest, dearest friends has gone through so much heartache, but does so much for so many, and just an amazing human being. But he was doing houses and things, and I wanted to be more of the physical mental health. I'm talking 2014, before mental health became a thing, right? I wanted to be, let's be buff, let's be fit, let's get out, let's do this, brain power, food, health, nutrition. And that's how we started the foundation in 2014. And we do so many programs, but Breaking Bread with Heroes. So twice a week, somewhere around the world, we feed between 300 and 3,000 people every week in bases, US bases around the world. I'm about to just take 80 people for a 54-mile hike in Scotland on the 3rd of June. Thanks to our great partners, American Airlines, that's helping us take all these people. We bought the village of Dunkeld to put them in hotel rooms, and then we do this march together. And what is unique about this march, John, is it's not a race. It's you can do 20, 26, 38, or 54 miles, bronze, silver, or gold. But it's 1,000 coalition wounded from all the different nations that speak broken English. We get together, we walk 2 miles together, we talk about stories, and then we all meet at the end. And then I do a dinner. I was just at the Invictus Games because we sponsored out with Prince Harry and whatever. And the teams that I've been taking for the last 11 years into the YOMP a lot of them were there, like shouting and screaming, Brazil, Colombia, England, all these people. When you march, and again, not a race, and you're listening to people's story, and then you feed them at the end of it, it's, again, those defenses come down. Our coalition forces don't get what we get here. They don't get the support. They don't get that. So my goal is not my program. The program is the Army Benevolent Fund of England, and we pay an entrance fee. It's $200 or whatever each, and that money goes to those foundations to help them folks. But it's eye-opening to see different cultures and coming together. And we've got a guy that's got 99% burns, triple amputees. This year, I have 2 Medal of Honor recipients with us in our AD. But there's 1,200 people traipsing through Scotland, getting soaking wet, falling down. I broke my tricep on one of them a couple of years ago. But it's just, that's one of the programs. Breaking Bread we do, which I told you, around the world. We partner with Dean Kamen to bring stand-up wheelchairs that go over any terrain with no limbs, right? That can help people. We give about 10 of them away a year at $50,000. We do dogs, we do grants. I was literally on the USS Albany, a submarine, when Governor Shapiro's house got firebombed. We end up literally getting off the submarine the next day, going up and feeding all the firefighters to put that fire out. So we take care of the firefighters, police officers. It's RobertIrvineFoundation.org. It's an amazing, that's what my life.
Brother, listen, man, you grew up under a bridge with a father who disrespected you and his wife. And you travel the world feeding not just stomachs, but souls, and drawing people into the conversation. Your life, you could have become so hard. It was the word you described for yourself as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead, in the best of ways, you become so soft. And it's a beautiful life story. I've got a couple quotes from you. I just want you to, in one sentence, tell me what you're saying to me. Discipline is not punishment. It is a form of love.
Yeah. I feel that we don't take, as leaders, and you can quote me again on this on the book, when I say, look up into the stars and say, dream, and maybe one day it'll happen, right? We don't take, as leaders, and leadership for me is 4 things. It's empathy. That means that I know that, John, you have an autistic son, and you come to work and you had a bad day, or your son's had a bad day, and you act differently. I should know that you have an autistic son. I should be saying to you, John, what's going on? Tell me. Go home. I got you. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about whatever you need. Let me know. That's what good leadership is. It's trust. It's authenticity. It's empathy. And it's so funny because on LinkedIn yesterday, somebody wrote something about a young woman, and this CEO who was writing the article fired her. Mm. Then he found out all this that I'm just said to you. He drove around to find her living in her car because she'd been evicted, give her a job back, and help to get back on her feet. That's what leadership is understanding people. We all have flaws. I'm the biggest flaw there is on the planet. God put me here to be a flaw, I think. But it's okay to have flaws. It's okay to be not perfect. It's okay to fail. It's okay to do something wrong. Just don't do the same thing twice, right? But I believe in this one thing, and I'll say it. It doesn't cost money to be nice. It means opening the car door, helping somebody across the road. Listening can save a life. Buying groceries at a store, when you see it pushed to the side, it could be for a child that's not being fed. And I see this all the time in food banks. It's not people living on the street. It's people that just can't get their head above water, need a lift up. Not a handout, a lift up. That's what it is. And we have the ability and we have the platform, us, you, me, and a lot of others. And a lot of others don't do it, by the way. And I won't name them because they're big stars and I get really upset when they don't do it. And by the way, I tell them, it's just not, I'm not alone.
You do not seem, I used the word to describe you a moment ago, soft. That doesn't seem like your character, though. You seem to be a very direct, bold leader, man.
Yeah, I am. But it doesn't cost that, right? So I implore at the end of everything. I just did a cruise with 3,000 people last week, and I said, look, I know you'll do great things for people you love and you know. How about each one of you in this 3,000 cruise ship Go out every day with one thing in mind. Do one good thing for somebody you don't know, and just look at what that power would be if we all did something for somebody. And I'm not saying go and give somebody on the street money, but you can buy them food, you can buy them socks, you can buy them shoes, you can guide them. That veteran, there's so many people out there that just need a little nudge. And I recall this story a couple of months ago when a young college kid in Florida videoed a man playing the piano. It went viral. He was a veteran, by the way, a Marine veteran, but nobody knew that until they dug into it. The guy now has a record label. He has a house. They just need that. Nobody's going to ask for help. Nobody likes to ask for help. Hand up, not a handout.
Robert Irvine, we have 7 questions that tether every one of our amazing chefs, servants, sailors, leaders together. So here we go. Get ready.
Yep.
What's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
7 Habits of Highly Effective Families.
What's one positive characteristic, one beautiful trait that you possessed as that little boy growing up in England that you wish you modeled as brilliantly today?
Innocence.
If your home caught fire and all living people, things are out, and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item, what's the one thing you would grab?
My family.
They're already out, so they're out safely.
Okay.
Husband, dad, all,
What would I
everybody.
back? Once I get my family, there's nothing worse, anything to me other than my wife and kids.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you like to be next to?
Nelson Mandela.
What's the best advice, Mandela, your wife, your dad, your mom, anyone else ever gave you? So the best advice you've ever received is,
Just be yourself.
what do you wish you had known at age 20? What wisdom might have benefited you to hear at age 20?
You don't have to. It comes down to one sentence: be yourself, number one. But you don't have to stack up to somebody next to you. You don't have to try and beat them. You don't have to try and keep up with them. You don't have to be them. You have to be the best version of yourself.
Robert Irvine, my friend, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
Wow. You did the best you could.
Well, dude, you did the best you could, and in doing so, you fed countless people not just meals, but hope. And that's not giving someone a hand up. It's reminding them of the dignity of their lives, and I appreciate you.
Well, I thank you for doing this. There's something I would say, take a look, and I say this on the show a lot. Look at yourself in the mirror, and do you like the person that you see in that mirror? And if you do, go out and use that person to do great things in this world. If you don't, change it.
Hmm. Well, Robert, thank you for changing the person you saw in the mirror, and in doing so, changing the world, man. It's incredible what you've overcome, what you've accomplished, and what you're doing to give back.
We still got lots to do. There's plenty more life left in the 6-year-old, I hope. And we're doing that, and with people like yourself on board and doing great things you're doing and touching people's lives. If we all did it collectively together, there's nothing this world can't become. The diversiveness is, look, we can have difference of opinion, we can have different political views, we should all be able to talk about them without setting somebody's house on fire, without punching them, without getting upset, without breaking friendships. I mean, guys, we're humans. Be nice to each other.
My friends, it's not impossible, turns out, to be human and love the one in front of you. That is Robert Irvine. My name is John O'Leary. Today is our day. What a gift. Live inspired. Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.